Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have. What's up, everyone? It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and today we're going case by case. I want to take a second and discuss the Brett Hankinson case. So we did an initial breakdown and discussion about this Brett Hankinson case, which is the only law enforcement officer that was actually charged with anything with regards to the Breonna Taylor shooting. All of the other officers were cleared of any charges. The grand jury did not indict them on anything. The prosecutor did not prosecute them for any charges, just Brett Hankinson for endangering the lives of the others around, the neighbors of the Taylors, the other people in the apartment complex, because he fired shots through a glass door, didn't know what he was necessarily firing into, couldn't necessarily see where he was shooting. So he was charged with 3 counts because he endangered 3 people, 3 neighbors. And he could have been facing, I believe, up to 1 to 5 years in prison if he was convicted for those charges. Well, the trial took place. It took a little over a week. The prosecution called 26 witnesses throughout the case, and they were pushing that he just was totally reckless and disregarded the safety of others, fired shots when he shouldn't have, went against training, didn't do what they say in police procedure. And the defense, like we've seen in a lot of these cases, was self-defense, basically, and defense of the other law enforcement officers, defense of their lives, defense for their safety. And the defendant himself took the stand and testified. We're seeing a common theme. A lot of people, I think, believe criminal defendants don't testify generally at trial. And while I think that's actually true, more don't testify than do. But when you actually have self-defense cases, that flips. And it's more often, not always, but more often that criminal defendants actually testify, tell the jury what they were thinking, tell them why they made the decisions they did. And Brett Hankinson took the stand. He cried. He tried to talk to Breonna Taylor's family. He apologized for all of the outcomes of what happened that night, the chaotic situation. He said her life did not have to end there. But he explained why he fired the shots that he did, and that he was defending his fellow officers. And there was proof that one of the officers had been shot and was seriously injured. That's obviously fear of serious bodily injury and fear of potential imminent death. So he argued that it was justified for him to take deadly action in response, and he was trying to protect his fellow officers. Well, the jury listened to 26 prosecution witnesses. They listened to the defendant testify. They went back, they deliberated for 3 hours, and then came back and returned a verdict of not guilty across the board. All 3 counts of endangering those 3 neighbors to Breonna Taylor, he was found not guilty, and he was able to be sent home. It was an emotional trial for him. He was really emotional throughout the trial. The Taylor family and Taylor supporters were there. It was very emotional for them. We talked at the beginning how they were trying to find justice for that, and how the circumstances were horrible, and it was very tragic and sad what happened. The actions of her boyfriend, of law enforcement officers, and everything just resulted in a lot of tragedy that night. But this is not necessarily how you get that justice. And the jury found that he was not guilty, and this was not going to be the way that justice was found for Breonna Taylor. So we'll see how that continues, and if anything else comes down the pike. One other thing that's interesting about that case is other law enforcement officers that were there that fired shots that didn't get cleared by the grand jury pled the fifth and refused to testify, basically because they did not want to incriminate themselves or risk incriminating themselves, because there are also federal investigations going on. So even though they might not be charged by the state, they don't want to incriminate themselves potentially for federal charges. So they took the stand, they pled the fifth. So no necessarily evidence was taken from them, but I wonder how that had an effect on the jury, and the jury thinking, why is this guy charged and nobody else? So whatever effect it may have had, they end up coming down with a not guilty verdict for Brett Hankinson. So he will not be thrown in prison for these acts. I know we talked about some of his troubled history and how that could come into play. I don't know how much of that came out.
I didn't watch the entire trial, just read some recaps, but wanted to let you guys know in case anybody was following that, it was a not guilty verdict. So yes, let me take a second, like the video, subscribe to our page. We have a lot of fun on the page, especially on Fridays, where we can talk through, answer questions, do the Q&As, the AMA type of deal at the end of every episode. So make sure you subscribe to our page and like it if you haven't already.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.